have to be careful when we open up our consciousness. Drinking opens up your consciousness, right? Drugs open up your consciousness. And that's why in, psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, like people talk so much about the importance of set and setting. You've got to be in a really safe, protected container when you open up your whole consciousness to who knows what.
Hey everyone, so today I have Melissa with us again, and we are going to talk about and discuss, unattached burdens. And Melissa's, all social media handle, her link, her coaching, all the details are going to be there in the description. So make sure that you guys go there, show some love, and in case if you need help, just reach out to her. She's easily accessible. You don't have to wait in queue. She's easily accessible, and she writes beautifully on Substack. So I mean, you can get hold of her there as well. So yes, without any delay, let me welcome Melissa. Melissa, thank you so much for joining in today.
Good to see you, Sarah.
Yeah, and so how are you doing, Melissa? How are you today?
I have been through a minor, when you have those like ups and downs in your inner work. Recently, I really pushed really hard to do a lot of unburdening, a lot of witnessing of deep, deep exiles.
Wow.
And, when you go through one of those phases, I mean, I often say to my clients, I say, you have parts who may not want to go out, socialize, whatever. And I really want to respect that and encourage that. Because we only have so much energy, right? We can't do all the outward things and all the inward things, right? Like you only have so much energy. So you can go in or you can go out, but you can't do both. You can't add deep inner work onto a full social life, right? You can't do that. So you may need to pull it back, and that's okay. Or even, take time off from work. Who knows? Whatever is available, reduce. Less is more. Yeah. So, I mean, I've really been, doing a less and just really pounding my inner work. It's been like a month hard, like wake up in the morning, witnessing exiles, have a day, night before I go to bed, witnessing exiles, wake up, do it all again for like 30 days straight. Right. And I mean, I was at a point where I was like, oh my God, I think I might break from this. Like it's just so much, but I had a breakthrough over the last couple of days, like really intense breakthrough.
Wow.
It really does have to do with this topic of unattached burdens, this breakthrough. So we're talking about it. And now that I've broken through, my nervous system does just feel the benefits because hard work pays off. Just feel like, okay, I'm coming out the other side of this really hard, this intense inner work phase. Because that's how we do it, right? We do it in phases. We're not like doing it intensely crazy all the time, but we're doing a phase. Then we come out of it, we integrate, we kind of relax, and then we do another phase, and that's kind of the way to do it. Yeah.
So coming to today's topic, Melissa, unattached burden is something, I really want to learn more about because I, went through the work of Mr. Schwartz. I mean, the founder who actually, devised this IFS framework and system. Then I, did have a conversation with Bob also, and then you. I mean, there is a lot of things to learn. I mean, in the last podcast also, I did learn a lot of things, to be honest, because this is not my domain. This is not the area, that I work. And there is no harm in learning. I mean, I might not use it for the client or someone else, but I might, use it for myself. So why not nourish myself?
Yes.
Now, Melissa, IFS, I mean, in my personal viewpoint, suggests that every burden is a part of us. And, some of them remain invisible. And
can I noodle that?
Even though,
Sarah,
I'm sorry?
Can I noodle what you just said? Because
Yeah.
you said every burden is a part of us. So I really want to be super, super clear that parts, right, are like IFS in general. When you hear about IFS, you're taught everything inside of you is a part, right? It's part of you. But burdens are not actually parts of us. So I really want to be super clear that burdens are not parts, right? Burdens are negative feelings or emotions that the parts carry, like garbage they've picked up along the way. but they aren't, the burdens are not part of us. So I just want to be super, super clear about that, just so that we're like, you know what I mean, on the same page as we start talking about this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, let me just, add in over here. I mean, the way how I see, definitely there is, a huge room to learn, because that's the reason we are having these kind of podcasts, with experts like you and others. So, the way how I see in a layman term, or, as someone who doesn't know about it, unattached burden, is said to be, a part of us. It is, sometimes invisible, but it keeps exerting power without consent, on us, on our life, on our action and reaction and everything. Now, Melissa, I would like to know, why do certain burdens persist as ghosts in the psyche, and what keeps them unattached for decades despite of all the efforts that we make? And if you can add in some, example or personal experience, so that we can understand things better, it would be great.
Yeah. So I first started to work with unattached burdens, or, and people have different names for them, right? Some names can be kind of triggering for people, like they could be entities or ghosts or demons. I think that if you read Bob's book, he talks about lots of different terms that different cultures have used for
Mm,
these energies, right?
mm.
Some kind of negative energy that only wants one thing. And what is the one thing that these things want? Do you know what it is? What word is the number one word that describes what they want? What would it be?
Control.
So close, yeah. Power, right?
Wow.
I mean, and I've done a lot of work with my own unattached burdens, my own, demons. And
Mm-hmm.
there is no conversation that doesn't start or end or all revolve around the word power. All they want is power. That's all they want. They really believe that if I have power over you, ha 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 ha, won't that be fun for me? And it's like they just
Mm.
off of power, right? So when we start to frame this conversation about untouched burdens, I think it's really important to hold the framework that all they want from start to finish, first, middle, last, is power. So everything goes back to power. They want power. And so like they will, they're one way you can think of them, and I mean, this is all woo. Okay, so hey, if people have problems with woo, maybe step out now, you know what I'm saying, because we're going there, right? So when we are young, when we are little, or when we're in a hospital, or when we're sick, right, and our defenses are down, if we have
Mm.
cheese holes in our boundaries, okay, these entities
Mm.
kind of float into us, and they like to jump from a place of lower power to higher power. So anywhere they think that they can create like a little nest, a little place where they can just suck off of you like a vampire and get your power and get your energy, they will do it. Right. So it just gives them joy. It's just, that's what's fun for them. So like people who, so when I was a kid, I was in really horrific, very, very traumatic situations. And there would be a lot of negative energies floating around. And, when you're a shiny little kid who has, I don't know, like you, like me, we could be little gifted kids, or we could be just, there's something about us, right? There's an energy, a light. And these demons, these unattached burdens, they are like, they're like moths to the flame of energy, moths to the flame of power, moths to the flame of like something yummy. So they will go from, say, like this psychopath, right? Say some 30-year-old psychopath who's abusing you, into your
Mm.
6-year-old body, right? Because they're like, I
Mm.
think I'll get even more power if I jump into you. And so I
Mm.
think that's their original interest, is where will I get more power, right? So as a child in very abusive situations, especially if you're a gifted child, or, sensitive, or have something, right? They're attracted to it, and you will just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate and accumulate these demons, these unattached burdens. It's horrific. You can just be like, I call it like being a demon hotel, you know? And they just lodge in you everywhere they can. And then they're just sucking off your energy forever. And it takes a lot of energy to like, I mean, the more terrible experiences you've had and the more, you know, these get into you, the more you just got to clean them out, clean them out, clean them out. I mean, you know, just clean them out. So I think that's the origin of how they get into you, like as a kid. But then as an adult, when we are trying to heal, right? I think that the more we heal and the more light we begin to, you know, embody as we get lighter, you know, as we clear more crap out, right? Paradoxically, a lot of wounded healers like you, like me, what happens to us, okay, is that we have a certain level of light and a certain level of like more evolved consciousness. Yeah. We also have shit boundaries. A lot of us have bad boundaries and we're still, you know, full of like errors. We were trained to believe, you know, abuse is love. And, you know, we have Stockholm syndrome or trauma bonding or like addictive attachments, right? We've got wacky stuff, like blessings to us. We've been doing a lot of healing, but it doesn't mean, you know, we're all done, right? So we're kind of lopsided. Like we're light in these places and then we're all messed up in these places. And oh my gosh, that makes us tasty cakes for these unattached burdens, right? Because we have more energy, we have more power, but our boundaries are crap and they just love to get right into us. I will go to a training, right? Like a psychology training or something. And every unattached burden in every person in that training sees my light and is like, oh, good, I'm going to jump into her. And I'll leave that training with more unattached burdens than I had when I came to it. Because they jump out of the other people into me.
It makes sense.
Yep. Yeah.
I've experienced something similar. I mean, I really like the way how you described that, you know, those cheese holes and these energies or entities, you know, they are just parasitic, you know, things,
Totally parasites. Totally.
interdimensional. And you know they just look out for those moments. What kind of cheese hole are we talking about? Are we talking about the time and period when we are extremely vulnerable or when we are experiencing some emotional highs and lows? What is it? What are those cheese hole moments, if you could, you know, explain?
Yeah, I mean, some of them are really like simple to understand. It could be like if you're in the hospital, right? If you're sick, you know, just you're literally your physical defenses are down or you're injured, stuff can get into you. If you're in like if you are not aware, you're not embodied. So drinking, taking drugs, right? Easy ways to just open up your whole system to anything. I remember one time I do this class called the Deep Magic Group, and it's the highest level of like inner work that I offer. It's very like it's like we're opening ourselves up to our highest, our guides, you know, like which guides are the opposite of, you know, the unattached burdens, right? They're the positive entities that are floating out in the world, right? That are, you know, here to help us, right? I talked to this one woman once about this class and she goes, oh my God, I would never take a class like that. And I was like, okay, you know, like I'm like, I'm just, it's an offering. You know what I mean? She goes, you could open yourself up to very negative entities. And I'm like, you are right. So when you open to the higher dimensions, you know, like people are afraid, they like, you know, the common way of dismissing these levels of consciousness is to call it woo, right? Like, oh, that's woo. You know, I'm not into woo, you know. Well, there is a protective aspect to rejecting quote unquote woo, right? Because if you open up to higher things, you could accidentally open up to, you know, these negative entities, these unattached burdens also, right? So we really do have to be careful when we open up our consciousness. Drinking opens up your consciousness, right? Drugs open up your consciousness. And that's why in, you know, psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, like people talk so much about the importance of set and setting. You've got to be in a really safe, protected container when you open up your whole consciousness to who knows what, because if you don't do it carefully, you could let in these unattached burdens. It's absolutely possible.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Melissa, in trauma work, I feel and I have observed that, these burdens, they act very parasitic. They are into sapping vitality. And even in some of the cases, I have seen, them creating, a kind of a compulsive pattern, if you understand what I mean.
For sure.
Now, Melissa, can a part truly hijack our system, acting, almost autonomously? And if so, how does IFS reclaim, agency without repressing it? What are your thoughts?
Great question. So, I mean, one thing that Bob says and that I really agree with is that unattached burdens, you do have to be really careful about like suddenly thinking, oh, everything inside of me is an unattached burden. It's not mine. I got to get rid of it. Right. Because a lot of the time, it's just a part, like a firefighter in particular. Firefighters are the ones that are the parts in IFS that are going to be the most mistaken for unattached burdens. Right. So going back to quick overview of IFS, right? You have a equilateral triangle of parts inside of you, right? You've got protectors, managers, and firefighters, and they protect you from the pain of the exiles. That's our wounded children parts that carry the negative feelings and beliefs that we got when we were children, which are called burdens, right? So those are the burdens that the exiles get, right? And then the firefighters and the managers try to protect us from the burdens. The managers do it proactively. They do that by like trying to avoid things. Like say you have a family member and whenever you call them, they say shit to you and you feel bad, right? Like say someone like from my own life, hey, call up my, sibling and they say, oh, it's so good that you're a coach, The great thing about that is that you can work on the phone and then people won't see what you wear.
Oh, God.
You know what? Okay, so that's right. That's bullying. You know what I mean? That's
Hmm.
cheating and, criticizing me. And this, I've taken in so much of this criticism, right? Like telling me, oh, you look stupid and the way you dress is stupid. Like, okay, that's the parts of that person, right? That's their parts. That's their issues. That's not mine to take in, right? But because this is what I can get when I call them, my manager protectors go, oh my God, my exiles don't need to be punched in the face with that, right? So don't call that person. Just don't call them, right? So avoidance, just don't even engage, right? So that's managers that are proactive protectors. They keep you from, you know, even being in contact, or they try to like do things, or they might be like, oh, I feel so bad about how I look, I'm going to try to buy new clothes and like look better so that I don't get criticized. You know what I mean? Like something so I can like proactively protect myself against criticism, right? That's manager parts. They're like executive, managing parts that manage how you look, how you act. They try to make you successful so people can criticize, whatever way they can do to defend you against being criticized, right? But meanwhile, look, I mean, eventually I have to call this person, right? They're a family,
Hmm.
right? So unless I decide to go totally no contact, all right, I eventually call them, and then sure enough, they say something, and then my exiles take a hit and they feel bad, and then my firefighters are the reactive protectors, and so the firefighters go, okay, let's eat a bag of chips now, right? Because you feel really bad and you feel stupid and you've been criticized for the billionth time about how you look. So now I'm just gonna like numb that pain with a bag of chips, right? And so
Hmm.
firefighters are the parts who do our addictions. So they will numb or try to get us higher than the flames of that pain that's been triggered, right? So, it might be 10 episodes of Netflix or food or drugs or shopping, anything that just takes our mind away from it and is kind of, like you said, not addictive, but compulsive, like
Hmm. Hmm.
they all come from firefighters, like to just keep us spinning in whatever compulsion so that we don't notice the pain down below, right? And so it's often the firefighter parts that get mistaken for the unattached burdens because they can really take us over. I mean, I remember the last time I had a binge because food is one of my main, like, has been historically one of my main firefighters. And as I've like worked through, done tons and tons of IFS, it's gotten better and better and better. Oh, thank you. But, you know, it started out, I mean, I was a total food I mean, I had binge eating disorder. So it was really bad, like life threatening. But IFS cured that. The first like 3 months of IFS cured my binge eating disorder. It was amazing. It was like holy grail. But then after that, I still suffered with sugar addiction, and I kept working and working and working on it. And I finally got to the point over the last couple years where I would binge on fruit. I mean, that's how bad my addiction is. I honestly, I can't eat fruit, because if I eat one apple, I'll probably go eat like a pound of tangerines. You know, it's like, what? 2 pounds of tangerines? Like, okay, yes, maybe fruit may be healthy for you, but I know that 2 pounds of tangerines is not healthy for me, you know? Like, so I would just be like this eating goblin. And I can remember like being in the car driving to the grocery store where this like the goblin is out, right? Like, who is driving my car? Okay. The goblin. All right. My
Mm.
firefighter is driving the car, and it's going to go, you know, get 2 pounds of tangerines and maybe like 4 or 5 bottles of like kombucha, right? This is the plan. Okay. And in the back, I have parts. It's like little parts in the back seat who are like, but we don't want to eat all that sugar. Why are we doing this? Like, but they're powerless because the goblin is in control, right? And so it is really true that parts can absolutely take over our bodies, our consciousness, and force us to do things we don't want to do. Absolutely true. If we're that triggered, you know, until the flames of whatever's triggered have finally gone out, and then they can relax, and then we, you know, stop doing that. It took me like 10 days of eating 2 pounds of tangerines. It was insane.
Mhm.
I felt like, where is Melissa? Like, where did I go? You know, I was like knocked out of consciousness and just replaced by this firefighter, right? But it was a firefighter. It wasn't an unattached burden. It really was a part of me, you know? And so the solution to that is over time. I mean, the first solution is not to beat that part up, because that's not going to help us, right? So understanding, if you have a lot of trauma, you're going to have a lot of triggers. And then sometimes, you know what? You're just going to be wacky. And that's okay, right? So like, no shame, no shade. I had a 10-day binge. I ate 10 times 2, 20 pounds of tangerines in 10 days. If you think my liver enjoyed that, I have a timeshare like to sell you. You know what I'm saying? Like, that did not go well for me, right? My
Mhm.
system was wrecked, but it's what had to happen because there was just a lot of trauma coming up and my nervous system was freaking out. Okay. So the first step is to not shame yourself to the fullest extent you can, and understand that sometimes when we're processing through trauma, it's going to be chaos and bumpy, and it's not going to look perfect. Okay. That's first. Then second is consistent IFS work, or whatever you use for your inner work, whatever you use to really go to the exiles and do the deep trauma work consistently. That's what's going to chip away at the overall burdens that are down there, because the burdens are what trigger the firefighters to do the weird addictive behavior, right? Like, if I have a feeling that I am worthless, I don't matter, I am nothing, that is a burning black hole of deep pain that's way down there, right? And I've got to like use whatever I've got. Like, it may only be like I'm getting a teaspoon of that crap out of me at a time when I do, you know, inner work, right? But I have to get rid of, unburden that lake of poison that I've taken in, right? And if I consistently do that, like day in, day out, week in, week out, then over time, I have less like overall negative crap that I'm carrying around, so that when a new piece of crap comes into my life, it doesn't trigger me so much that then I have a 10-day binge, you know? So like, as I unburden my primary wounds, I can reduce my like set point of how bad I feel about myself. So that maybe like 2 years ago, when this person said this crap about me, I'd go, you know, binge, or, you know, eat a lot of fruit or something, right? And now they say it, and I was here, but now I'm here, right? And so, I mean, maybe I take a hit, or I don't feel great, or I'm like, yeah, you know, I'm probably not going to call that person for another 2 months. But I don't completely spin out of control, because I've been consistently doing the work. Like, some people I've noticed, I've had clients who only feel like they want to do the work when they're triggered. And it's like, okay, that may be like an entry point to, like, you feel bad, you're triggered, so now you're going to call up your, whatever, your inner work person that you do inner work with and do the work. But if you're not consistently, just chipping away, you're not going to get like the big gains, right? Because it's like, if you train a week before a marathon, right? And then you don't have a great marathon and you wonder why, versus the person who was training the whole year before the marathon, obviously, it's going to make a big difference. So consistently doing your inner work, consistently staying connected to the exiles, consistently witnessing and unburdening their trauma, that's really where you get the deepest gains with IFS, is consistent inner work. Yeah.
True. And, this reminds me of a phase in my life. I had, run away from my house and, I had started life independently. I was not, into any kind of addiction, back when I was with the family. But, I had a lot of suppressed emotion. I had inability to regulate or co-regulate because everyone was, an asshole in that family. So, there is nothing called co-regulation, or, you are unable to, experience that limbic regulation because everyone is effed up. I mean, everyone is a retard, psychopathic, narcissistic, and extremely abusive, entitled individual. So I had all of the suppressed emotion and feeling. And when I became independent, when I left them and moved out, I got a job. And the first thing that I did was to, get into addiction. I mean, it might sound strange, but, I was a codeine, phosphate addict for 10 years. And this is the first time I'm talking about it on my channel. And, it was so bad that I used to force eat. I don't know why. I used to take codeine in order to sleep. I used to take codeine in order to work extra hours without any payment. I had this big schizoid, inside of me that, was just eating everything. I was not making good use of money, no savings, no investment, just eating any rubbish that looked and felt familiar. Addiction to sleep and numb and to be productive. I don't know why. Maybe it was, the deep seated, feeling that I need to prove my worth, so that, all of this continues. Horrible nightmares. And my only, good thing, that I used to do in that period, that 10-year period, a decade, the only good thing was that, I don't know whether it was the unattached burden, the firefighter, or the manager, or however you see. The only good thing was that I never, left, researching and exploring different topics. That was something which was like a very strong stimulus. That was something which stimulated. And the funny thing, I was not even sexual when I was an addict. It was all, kind of autoeroticism. I was just all by myself. Okay, I will, do things myself, but I'm not going to go out there and engage in sexual activity and experience pleasure. The idea of having pleasure with someone else or experiencing pleasure was something which was unfathomable. I was very anhedonic. I knew only certain ways of, experiencing pleasure. So now when I, hear your work, when I hear, work of Mr. Schwartz and, Bob, now it all makes sense that these unattached, I mean, it could be the unattached burdens that, further took control over me. They wanted, some kind of a chemical disbalance or imbalance in my brain so that they can just, grow into me. They were latching, they were around, but they were unable to get inside the house. And one fine day there was a storm, and my door went open, and it was just broken, and they got an easy pass. Now, Melissa, I would want to know, IFS advocates that, compassion is the most important thing when you are dealing with yourself, The other parts, firefighter, unattached burden, just be compassionate,
Yeah.
don't, minimize them or invalidate them, or, treat them as, inferior or bad parts.
Mm-hmm.
Or everything is good, treat them with compassion. Even though that part is intrinsically, destructive, we are advised, based on the IFS framework, we are advised to treat them, with utmost compassion, respect. Now, I would want to know, how do we balance radical compassion with the necessity to confront paths that actively undermine, growth, or, our well-being? I mean, how do we strike that balance? Because it feels very confusing, and I mean, I'm sorry to say, but it's so annoying. How do I address something with compassion who's just screwing me up on a daily basis? How? I mean, if you could, shine some light, Melissa.
Yeah, so I use finger puppets to be my parts, and I wonder if I have any crazy firefighters here. Well, I mean, here's like my main firefighter, Sharky. Shark.
Wow.
Yeah. And I have like a firefighter, the koala. I have a video about this part, and I remember in the middle, towards the tail end of my last binge, I talked to the koala, and the koala was like, "Well, wouldn't it be great if we got some pot?" And like, I was like, "Well, we're not. That's not happening because I mean, I'm highly addictive, and if I start smoking pot, my life's probably going to be over. So we're not doing that." And so the koala's like, "Well, then I'm going to have to eat like 2 watermelons." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I hear you." And so, like, even in that moment, right, where you hear your firefighter who's like, "I want to do something completely insane because, like, no one needs to eat 2 watermelons. You want, huge watermelons, right? Like the size of bigger than my head, right? Like, this is not going to be good, right?" So, like, that moment, the first thing is you have to work with the other parts who are frustrated with those parts, right? It's like, say, my main manager here, Green, is like, "We can't eat 2 watermelon. That's crazy. We can't do that." Okay, Green. All right. So I'm gonna tell, the koala, hold on. I'm talking to Green now. Let me help you with this. Okay, because a lot of times manager parts, they want us to believe that we are them, right? Because they're like, "I'm the voice of reason. I'm good. Nobody needs to eat 2 watermelon at a time. That's like 10 pounds of watermelon. That's not good for you." Okay, Green. Connection before correction. Okay, you're right. Okay. You are right. Okay. But the self does not really care, you know, unless it's like really going to kill us, right? The self is like, I can handle a lot of chaos. Okay. So Green, if we need to eat 2 pounds of watermelon, actually, we are going to. Okay. Like, Green, I'm the self. And I'm here to tell you, if it happens, I can handle it. Okay. What I need to do is help you with your distress. What is your distress about? Right. Because we can't let the managers manage the other parts. That doesn't work. They don't have the skill set. Right. Because, like, this isn't compassionate, right? You're fucked up. What the fuck are you doing, dude? Stop that. In the history of calm down, did anyone ever calm down because you told them to calm down? No, that doesn't work. So we have to unblend from our managers. And that's why I'm a big believer in doing a lot of work, getting to know our protectors so that we really know who they are, so we can really get a self to like protector relationship. So that when they get annoyed, when they get frustrated, when they get impatient, like, "What are you doing?" You can go, "Hey, I hear you're really frustrated. I don't want you talking to this part because it just stresses that part out. I'm going to talk to you guys separately," right? So separating, unblending, and getting a self to part relationship is the first step. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So the parts that get annoyed, like, I mean, there are 5 P's in IFS, which are patience, perspective, persistence, playfulness, and presence. The 5 P's of self. Okay. But I really believe that patience is like the top one, you know? And I honestly believe that when you really experience self energy, I mean, as you do the work, as you embody, self, right? I think it actually, you go into a dimension where the word patience isn't even relevant, because patience implies impatience. You know what I mean? And so, like, when you are encountering the mania, the chaos, the insanity, the irrationality of your inner world, okay? Like, that's what we must expect, okay? Managers are like, no, it's crazy. It can't be like this. And I'm like, I am the self. Yes, it can. Okay. Yes, it can. And I can handle it. But I need to help you step aside so that you are not trying to handle it, because you can't handle it. Right. But I can help you with that. Right. Like, what are you afraid would happen if we eat 2 pounds of watermelon? Well, we could get diabetes. You're right. We could. Then we'll deal with it when we get there. But I don't want to get diabetes. Well, that's really reasonable. I hear you. And we can only do what our system is available to do right now, right? We can't do better. So all I'm trying to do is be with the whole sum total of all the trauma and all the ways that it is acting out in my body. And I'm going to roll with that. And if that means that today I do eat 2 watermelon, I am going to do that with as much self-compassion and awareness as I can. The self can't stop firefighters. The self doesn't always have the energy or the capacity to stop a neurobiological process, of some kind of nervous system triggering, right? But what it can do, as my spiritual teacher said, is watching. It can just watch the process and be kind of like an ally to all the parts as we go through the process. Like when I was driving in the car and the Kraken was clearly driving the car and I was kind of in the passenger seat, I was still in the passenger seat saying to the people in the back, hey guys, I know this is really hard. It's just a process that's playing out and we're just going to do our best to get through it. Right? Because sometimes there's like waves of so much trauma. Some of us, unfortunately, we have so much trauma that we can't expect to do better. Along the way, we're going to be doing some weird firefighter things. And if we normalize that and we let the whole system know, you know what, sometimes we are going to be binging Netflix. Sometimes we are going to take codeine to sleep. Sometimes we are going to be working too much to like distract ourselves from all this pain, right? That's really okay. It's not the end of the world, because we're on a crazy planet and whatever it takes to get through it is what it takes to get through it. And that's the deep compassion of self rolling with our process in a loving way. It's not about being perfect. It's about being compassionate through the process.
True.
Yeah.
Melissa, unattached burdens, I mean, the way how I see, they have the ability to project themselves onto others, these unattached burdens.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the ability and capability to subtly, influence and shape relationship and, in some of the cases, power dynamics.
Yeah.
How do such projections operate, I mean, according to you? And what ethical challenges arise when we attempt to untangle burdens that impact, others' life? What are your thoughts?
It's a good point. For some reason, I have this little story about a very, very like super subtle. This is super subtle. It has a lot of different layers. So I'm eating at a table. It's like a public situation, in a workshop. And I'm talking to someone. And so, again, unattached burdens, whenever we start talking about them, we got to think about power dynamics. And so social status is all about power, right? So I happen to be speaking to someone with more social status in the group. And way down the table is another person, like maybe, I don't know, 8 or 9 or 10 people away. And I'm just eating, like, I mean, I'm just completely innocently having a conversation and eating, like I'm literally doing nothing crazy. Okay. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this individual gets blended with like either a part or an unattached burden, maybe both. And they yell, which is so weird because, I mean, like adults yelling across a table is like a little bit like, wow, who does that? Right. But they yell, Melissa, are you okay? Like across like, 16 people, right? Like 8 on each side. And I'm like, my whole nervous system is totally freaked out because I'm like, what the, it's like, what am I doing wrong? You know what I mean? Like, why are you yelling at me, disrupting me, interrupting me, freaking out my nervous system, right? And I mean, it appears, to the best of my understanding, that the ostensible, what would you call it? Like, plausibly deniable reason for yelling at me,
Mm-hmm.
disturbing me, and disrupting me, and like actually humiliating me, because it's humiliating to be called out in front of like 16 people as if you're doing something wrong when you're not, right? But the plausibly deniable reason that I'm being like suddenly, spotlighted like this and bothered and disturbed is because I was putting salt on my food. That's my crime. That's why I'm being yelled at across 16 people, right? Because I'm putting salt on my food. And when you really think about it, right, like that's not a good enough reason to yell at someone. You know what I mean? Like it's not reasonable to yell as if I'm very concerned about you because you're putting salt on your food right now. Like that's clearly coming from either a part or something crazier, right? Like that, because parts have urgency and they have, intensity and drama. This is like intensity, drama, urgency that's just not necessary, right? Like Sarah, if you were really concerned about me at the table, you might get up and walk over to me and say, Melissa, I'm noticing you're using a lot of salt. Like, you know what I mean? But even so, would you really mess with my, what I do with my food? Like why? We adults usually just live and let other adults like just eat their food. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, I was just like, I didn't know what to do at the moment because I was just like, I was so freaked out. But it turns out in my own inner work that I did get a demon. I did get an unattached burden from this incident. Very subtle, right? And the reason I got it is because this was so distracting and disturbing and jangling and like public, and so many people like looked at me like, what are you doing wrong, Melissa? And then I'm like, I'm not doing anything wrong. But because I have those Swiss cheese holes, right? And because this was also very sophisticated and very subtle because it's weaponizing care. Right? Plausible deniability is, I'm just concerned about you.
Yeah.
Underneath it, what it really is I am singling you out to shame and humiliate you in front of all these people to show everybody else that you're doing something wrong, right? There's something wrong with you. You're not normal. And I need to call that out in front of everybody, right? Like, and I wasn't aware of all these dynamics because this is very sophisticated, right? And that's how, are. They can be very sophisticated. So I was like, very disturbed, interrupted, jangled, freaked out by this, like on the spot. 16 people are looking at me. I'm like, what the? I'm just like all freaked out. And so the demon just the unattached burden jumped right out of that person into me. And it bothered me. I mean, Sarah, I am telling you, this incident, I couldn't let it go. It's such a small thing, right? It just seems so small. But it bothered me. It bothered me. It bothered me. It bothered me. Like my parts would not let it go. Sarah, oh my God. I would go over and over and over and over it. Finally, I was like, oh my God, you know what? The reason I'm not getting over this is because there's something about it that's deeper, darker, more evil, like there's something really wrong here that I'm not aware of. So finally, I get to the point where I think I got an unattached burden from that. So let me talk to the unattached burden because you can talk to them. I mean, it takes advanced IFS skills to do that, but it is possible. So I go, hey, demon, and again, like Bob says in his book, The Others Within Us, Robert Falconer, The Others Within Us, he says, you may as well be compassionate to them because you will get, you'll get more progress. You don't need to be a jerk to these unattached burdens either, okay? So I'm like, okay, I have an entity inside of me that I believe jumped out of this person when they yelled at me in the table, right? I believe, I really do, that this this entity jumped out of this person into me and it is lodged in me. Why? So I'm going to ask it. I'm like, hey, is there anything you want me to know? And I'm just like, I'm compassionate. I am working with the unattached burden in the same way that I work with all my parts. Okay. I'm not being a jerk to it. And first of all, it's mad because it's really mad that I found it, because they don't like to be found. They like to hide out and just like suck, be like little vampires that suck your energy. Right. And I'm like, but I found you. You have been found, because this has been bothering and bothering and bothering and bothering and bothering me. And I've tried. The way you can identify an unattached burden is when you've done everything in your possible power. You've done every IFS session. You've gone over and over the memory. You've witnessed everything. You've heard all the parts, and it still bothers you. And it still bothers you. And it's eventually you're like, oh my God, I think there could be just something more woo here. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, let me see if there's a demon. And sure enough, there it is, right? So it's mad that I found it. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, but, you're here now. So is there anything you want me to know? And it starts talking about how, well, the person you were talking to was of high status. And the person that, like, this demon gives me information that I wouldn't have known. You know what I mean? This never would occur to me because I'm not a generally jealous person. Like, that's just not whatever. Everybody specializes in various weird things. I don't specialize in jealousy. It's just not a thing that I feel very much. So this unattached burden says to me, yeah, well, the person who said this to you was jealous that you were talking to this high status person, and that they got triggered. They were jealous. And so they wanted to just, mess you up. And that's why they bothered you. That's why they did this to you. And then I was like, oh, you're messed up. And I could jump out of this person to you. And you seem more interesting. And like that same problem that I was talking about, how if you have a lot of energy, but you have bad boundaries, right? You can have unattached burdens jump into you. So it was like, oh, I always want to go from a place of lower power to higher power. And I saw that actually you have more power. So I'm going to jump into you. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. So, this entity just jumped into me right at that moment when I was just like, startled and surprised, and I felt shame and like what is happening, confusion, So in a moment like that, where someone does some weird interpersonal domination move that's very subtle or sly or manipulative, right? Based on who knows what their trigger is. They could be jealous. They could be, who knows what, right? Projecting. That's when one of these unattached burdens can easily jump in from them to you. And so, so it can be really subtle. And it took me a long time to, find it. And then once you find it, okay, so I had this conversation with it. I got the information. I was like, thank you for this information. Oh, so helpful. Because this has been bothering me for like 8 years. 8 years, this one moment.
Wow.
8 years, I can't get over it, right? So when I finally get to the bottom, it's an unattached burden. I'm like, okay, well now, is there anything more you want me to know? No, now you're going to kick me out. I'm like, I am. Okay. So that's when, when it comes to like kind of that firmness, kind but firm, compassionately, we do say to these unattached burdens, now that I found you, and now that we've had our conversation or whatever, to the extent you want to have a conversation with it, right? Like then you say, you have to leave my body. And once you have identified it, actually very easy to make it go. Because once your consciousness knows this is not me, you can just get it out. And so you can say to the unattached burden, if it's your business that you want to go jump into some other person, that's your business. I can't control you, right? So if you're going to go wander the world, get out of me and wander and get into somebody else, that's your business. But also, okay, you do have the opportunity to go to the other side, right? Like, because these burdens, these unattached burdens, right? They're kind of like wandering entities, and they're constantly looking for like more power so that they can feed themselves on your power, right? But there is a way that this can be boring. Because I'm telling you, to having talked to many unattached burdens in myself, like, because I always talk to them, because I want to learn about them. Some of them have been doing this for 200-300 years. And
Wow.
it gets boring. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of boring. It's kind of like if you were eating, ice cream for 300 years, right? Like just constantly like, oh, let me eat more ice cream to feel better. At a certain point, you're like, really, is this all there is to life? You know what I'm saying? So there's a way that even if you are really compassionate, they won't always, they won't always admit this. But I think that they honestly, there's a level of boredom and meaninglessness, that they're experiencing, and emptiness, and that they're always trying to fill it with power, always trying to fill it with power, but they never can fill it, right? And so I say you have the opportunity to try something different, which is to go to the other side and start over, right? On the other side, like basically to go, into the light, over the horizon, right? Go to the other side, leave this realm and go to the other side where things will actually be more, it will actually be more fulfilling for you. And I can't tell you or promise you how that journey is going to go, because I'm not you, right? You are like literally a different consciousness, a different entity than me, right? But all I can say is that, like, if this is boring, I am a portal. And like, what would it be like if perhaps one of the reasons these unattached burdens are always looking to jump from lower power to higher power is that on some weird level, they're seeking a portal to the next place, like a way to jump off this endless, ridiculous, meaningless, pointless, cycle of domination and destruction, and, siphoning your power and feeling like, well, ha, 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 I'm powerful over you. And, like, I enjoy destruction, which, like, it's not really, they think they enjoy it, but at the deeper level, it's just not really hitting the spot. And what would it be like if you get off that whole, that whole hamster wheel? And I am capable of helping you do that, because I can be a portal to the other side. And they're like, well, what is that like? Like, well, instead of getting out of my body and going to find some other body, I mean, like, look, you've been through many iterations of going from this person you thought was powerful, but then you found another powerful, right? And now, you thought I had more power, right? Well, I do. Okay. You had good discernment, because I do have a lot of spiritual power. And now you finally reached a place where I can help you go to the next level, the absolute next level, right? So I'm inviting you to take that opportunity, because you might not get that opportunity again. Who knows how many more people you're going to have to go through and through and through and through and through, until you get this opportunity again. So why not take this opportunity now? And at this point in my personal journey, almost every unattached burden that I encounter takes me up on the offer. And so I have a process of, like, unburdening an unattached burden, where it's like a light, that I send out of me into the sun, and I send it into the sun. And one thing that's really lovely about the way Bob Falconer describes unattached burdens is that sometimes they have legions. Like, it's not just one unattached burden that gets into you. It's like that and all its, like, little minions. Yeah. So it could be not just one, but like many. And so, like, it's like a whole, bunch of them come over. Like, it seems like it's one, but it's really one with its minions. And so when I unburden them, I unburden them in layers. Like, I do, like, it's like a visualization where I see, like, a large, like a huge circle of light going into the sun, and then a 3-foot ball of light going into the sun, and then a 1-foot ball of light, and then a 3-inch ball of light, and then a 1-inch ball of light, and then a centimeter ball of light, and then fireflies going into the sun, and then glitter going into the sun. So it's like all the way down. I make sure to cover all the minions so that I get the whole thing out. And then, it's a great feeling. It's a great feeling to get it out. Yeah.
True. And I mean, it all makes sense. I mean, I already mentioned about my addiction. I was battling addiction. And now it makes sense. Actually, it was these unattached burdens which actually hijacked me, which jumped onto me, from my mother's side and from my uncle's side, because they were into violating me at various levels.
Mm-hmm.
And to tell you honestly, they were the ones, these unattached burdens, that used to, gaslight me that I am powerful, I can do anything. And, there's interesting thing that I would like to add over here. They used to create these events, very poltergeist events, where, they used to literally, manipulate things. They used to literally, move things. And, literally make me feel as if I am powerful enough to engage with them and do things, even though I'm not physically going ahead and doing things. And now it all makes sense until, I don't know, it was the managers or the firefighters. One fine day, I decided that, let me put an end to my life. I mean, it's not making sense. And I OD'd, certain, medications. And I was, knocked out for 2 days. And maybe, 2 days I did experience out of body, experience plus near death experience. Of course, there was no, pulse oximeter or ECG, connected to me that I can, validate that it was, near death experience. But 2 days went by like this, and it was, half an hour, where I was. And I meet, this woman, and she comes to me and she says, "Sweetie, this is not your time. You have to go back." And I said, "But I don't want to go back. There's so much of fucking pain. I don't want that. I feel like shit over there. Please let me be here." And then I ask her out of curiosity, "Who are you?" And then she reveals herself that people call me Ma. Ma is the word, Hindi word for mother.
Mhm.
And then I look at her, and she looks dusky, wearing that Indian sari attire, long hair. And then she says, "People call me Ma Kali." And I was like, oh my God, this entity is something that I used to like and adore since childhood, because her form is, she's slaying the demon. She's killing the demon. And that fragile me used to always, envision that one fine day I'm going to be like her and slay all these MFs and slay all these assholes and teach them a lesson. And look, here I am able to see her. And that was the day of my transformation, and having a conversation. It was a kind of a, I would say, a lengthy conversation, packed in 30 minutes, if it makes sense. And
Totally.
then she pushed me back, and I can see my body, and then again I'm sitting in my body and coming back. And Melissa, after that day, of course, I got, all kinds of, feedback from my landlord where I was residing, friends who were calling, all the missed call and everything. After that day onwards, everything started changing.
Mm.
I felt that this entity, I mean, people can call it God, but I call her my friend, my rescuer, I mean, whatever. I mean, my mother, who I didn't get. I mean, the biological one was useless and tormenting, but yes, this one is a better mother for me. And from that day onwards, she got rid of addiction. She
Wow.
got rid of bad relationship with food. She got rid of fear that I used to have. And the jumping phenomena that you mentioned, that something jumped on you and you felt that, and later on you confronted. I used to feel that frequently. If someone used to fight with me and shout at me, all of a sudden I used to get into this mode of people pleasing someone who's disrespecting me. And it was almost like an override, and
Totally.
now it makes sense that it could be these unattached burden, because I'm so porous. I mean, almost like a strainer. I mean, all that holes like a mesh cloth,
Yep. Yep.
and they are just having a free access. I mean, as you described, that cheese hole thing.
Mhm.
And after having this experience, going there, which is forbidden, which we go, I don't know, if we die we go there, and again coming back, and started seeing the changes, that there was a very predominant voice inside of me who used to say, "Why are you drinking this? Why do you need sleep? You need to walk. You
Mhm.
shouldn't be eating this." And it was almost like, I got a mother figure, who was in a way teaching me, in a way raising me again in a healthy way, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Because
Yeah.
I was all about defiance. I had to teach them a lesson. I had to survive. I had to become this XYZ. And in that process, I was, simply, fucking myself up. I mean, I was not doing anything great.
Mhm.
And then this outer body experience, and then again coming back, resuming normal life and taking charge and control and starting fresh. But after that interaction, there was one thing that kept haunting me, and that was one of the unattached burdens, as how you explained, who used to tell me that you are a worthless piece of shit and you should die.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I used to, stand, across some edge, of a tall building or tall place at a height, they used to make me feel that I should fly from here, I should jump from here, and I should fly from here. And then, I mean, this happened, after 10 years of my encounter, that NDE and out of body experience. And then all of a sudden, something clicked in me. That voice again got activated, and that voice confronted and said, why do you want, if this is a piece of shit that you want to jump and die and end her because she's worthless, don't you have any better work? Go find some better individual rather than wasting your time on her. And I was listening this conversation and I was like, what? Who the fuck is talking and who the fuck is listening? And that was the end of that, voice who used to tell me, you should end, you should end, you should jump, you should jump. It all makes sense now. It almost like, it feels as if, all those jigsaw puzzle that was there in my head, and us interacting and talking about these things, it all adds up, and it's so clear that there are healthy parts in us that can help us.
Yeah.
There are things which I cannot explain or put in the word box, but there are things that can help us as well
Yeah.
and take a step further.
Mm-hmm.
And now, after processing this experience and after having this discussion, one important, question comes into my mind, and that is, what is exorcism according to you? What are they doing? Are they purging the unattached burdens, or are they working with, some entity that they are born with? I mean, what is it? I mean, how do you see it? I mean, when we, talk about IFS framework, how do you see via IFS? And your personal thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like Bob's book is so thorough. I really recommend people read it to get, like, if they're really interested in this topic, then The Others Within Us by Robert Falconer is the best book, right? I've also read a lovely little book by Edith Fiore called Edith Fiore. Well, you can look her name up. It's Fiore. And it's also about these same kind of topics. And what I love about both Bob and Edith is that they're saying that, we really don't have to be afraid of these entities, because, Bob really is focusing on how the mind is porous, consciousness is porous. It's normal, actually, for us to get these negative entities into us, but also that there are these positive entities around us, right? And they're not us, but they're existing in kind of like this, other dimensions that we don't see, but that some of us, if we open and give ourselves permission to feel comfortable and casual, like, oh, okay, I mean, like, it's not as if on a daily basis we don't believe in things that we don't see. Like, personally, I've never actually seen a mitochondria, but I believe in it. You know what I mean? Or like, I don't see gravity, but I see it in action when things fall down, right? I mean, I don't see Wi-Fi, I don't see radio waves, right? But like, obviously we all operate like knowing that radio waves and Wi-Fi exist, right? So the fact that things you can't see them does not mean that you can't believe in them or that they can't be part of your worldview, right? And what would it be like if unattached burdens or demons and guides or like higher energies, right? They're just outside of the frequency of what we can see, but that doesn't mean they're not real. And if we give ourselves permission to act as if they are real, and then we work with them, we'll find that if it's true that they are real, right? Which we both agree, we've had really profound human experiences of healing. And that's what Bob says over and over in the book, is like, I don't really care about can I prove or not or disprove, that these entities exist, whether they're negative or positive, right? My point is, when we give ourselves permission to believe in these entities, we can access the healing power that they have, both the unattached burdens to unburden them and get them out of us, and the guides to help us, right? And people who hold the belief in these entities, whether they're like, trying to work against us or work for us, people who use the power of these entities, right? It helps them heal. It is a profoundly healing belief that most cultures in the world hold and have traditions for working with negative and positive spirits, right? Most cultures have this. Our culture may be divorced from it, but that doesn't make it irrelevant just because we are ignoring it. It's still, just because you ignore something doesn't mean it goes away, right? So like your example, Sarah, is so gorgeous because it's like you went inside, you had this extreme experience, and your experience illustrates at least two things. One, that sometimes we need to allow chaos to allow healing, right? You OD'd,
Wow.
right?
Mm,
You OD'd, okay? That's not ideal according to like,
no,
okay, that doesn't look good on paper, okay? It doesn't look good on paper. Managers are like, what? Don't be eating those pills. You know what I'm saying? But
makes sense.
it went to a place, okay? It broke you open. It took you to a different dimension. It overrode who knows what, and it was so much chaos, blah, blah, right? That you went, and there was Kali Ma, right?
Yep.
There she was. And that contact with that one guide, that one external entity, whatever the hell it is, however anybody wants to
Yeah.
define it, right?
I can't label it.
It's total grace, and it saved and totally transformed your life, right?
So
So,
true.
and so, I mean, opening up to these dimensions, right? It really helps us heal. And that is why, Bob has been such a really intense advocate for opening up to this, right? And that's why I'm a huge advocate for opening up to it, because I wouldn't be where I am if I hadn't been kicking, the unattached burdens out, because I've just been a demon hotel, I mean, some
Oh
people,
God.
it's like the
Seriously.
demons are all like, oh, come on over here. And that's another thing, is the more demons you have, the more demons you get, because they're like, oh, come on over, come on. You know what I mean?
I'm already there. You can come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just fill up, and I'm like, out, So, I mean, so when you talk about the idea of getting rid of them in a weird, crazy ritual way, like exorcism, right? I
Mm,
mean, I think that's just like every cultures have different ways of dealing with them.
mm,
And, it's not, I mean, some cultures really take a real like aggressive approach, let's just say, right?
mm.
They don't believe that like the compassionate approach will work. But I think IFS shows us it is possible to work with them in a less dramatic, extreme way. You can do the exorcism without, the holy water and the, green vomit or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah,
True.
you can get them
Yeah.
out in a reasonable way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I think the book that you're talking about is The Unquiet Dead, if
Yes,
I'm not mistaken.
that's exactly it.
It is by Dr. Edith Fiore.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
mean, a hypnotherapist also. And I think in that book, if I'm not mistaken, she's talked about, how dead family member and dead individuals' spirit, latch on to you,
Yeah,
often
yeah.
intentionally, unintentionally. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, it's there in my collection.
Yeah. So I mean, because we're talking about unattached burdens, but it's like, well, those could be like fragments of
Yeah.
consciousness, kind of like burdens that just kind of got fragmented off and are floating around. But they also could be whole spirits, of people who died. So like if you witness a car accident or you're in a hospital where someone died or something, when people die, hey, that body is over. That demon, those unattached burdens, they got to go somewhere. And so they can jump into you then too. Mhm.
Here's a fascinating thing that, came in my mind, Melissa, and I would want to know your thoughts on that. I personally feel and I have observed that trauma makes you porous in
Yeah.
a way that you are only like a magnet attracting negative entities and energies. On the contrary, see, I have been on both the sides. Drugs, psychedelics, they increase your porosity to a whole different field and level, if that makes sense. And you can communicate with the good ones also.
Yeah. Yeah.
That level, that porosity level, is where you're open to good and bad both. But
Yep.
trauma, painful event, rape, molestation, domineering behavior, shouting, all of those, I mean, the kind of chemical phenomena that is there with those kind of events, that makes you like a magnet to the negative things.
For
But
sure.
when you take it step further, I have tried psychedelics also, and with psychedelics I had better communication with Ma Kali. I had communication with more entities, which I mean, the names that I have never heard in any of the books. I mean, and they look very different. So I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, is there different kinds of porosity level? What are your thoughts with your personal experience, Melissa?
That's a good point. Yeah, I do think that, yeah, it's kind of like filters, like,
Yeah, that's the right word. Yep.
like sometimes
Layers.
you can filter out the negative and just open to the positive. And that's what we're
Mm.
trying to do. Like in my deep magic group, like even just with intention, like always saying we're opening ourselves to the energies that are in our best and highest good. And we are not opening to any energies that, mean us harm. And just even setting, like, people don't understand the power of intention. It's like ridiculously powerful. I have learned the hard way that if you set an intention, that's like a contract with the universe, and like, do not play, like, don't play around with that, because you can get really intense experiences. Like one time, what I've learned about intentions, if you set an intention, it's vague, and no time limit, then generally speaking, you're pretty much in the safe zone, because you didn't put a time limit on it. But I once put a time limit on something where, like, I was a private tutor when I was like, before I was an IFS life coach. And I had this student that I just love with all my heart. And when he was in eighth grade, he was talking about how worried he was about high school, right? And as he was standing there in the kitchen, I thought to myself, uh-oh, I don't think that I'm the person. I don't think I'm self-led. This was like, over 25 years ago. Okay. I was like, I don't think I'm self-led enough. I mean, I don't know, 20 years ago, something like that. Like, to be the person he needs me to be to get through high school. Like, I need to be a better person for him. Right. So as he was talking about his fears, I was thinking, oh, I mean, his fears were legitimate, right? Because this is the kind of little super creative maniac that could get kicked out of high school or who knows what, right? Like, so I'm like, I don't want that to happen. I want to, like, shepherd him through, this experience of high school. So I set an intention standing there, like, right, in front of him, like, just in my mind. I was like, dear universe, please help me be the person he needs me to be by September 1st. That's playing with magic. Okay, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but that is a serious intention, because it's like, transform me by a date. Okay. I had the most murderous, violent, psychologically painful summer of my entire adult life. It was,
Oh God.
I lost so much money. I mean, you name it, like, everything was a cataclysm. Everything was a disaster. It was so horrible. However, because of suffering and suffering and being ground into nothing and nothing and nothing, like, week after week, and crying and just, like, horror. Okay. Terrible, terrible, terrible. I mean, things like, I had a car and I sold the car, but then I realized I need to buy the car back. Like, what am I
Oh
doing?
God.
Insane. I'm crying
Mm.
like car parking lots, like, just insanity. Okay. Getting memories back of being molested in cars. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just insane, insane stuff. Okay.
Mm.
But by September 1st, I'm a totally different person.
Wow.
Right. So because I set the intention, the universe was like, oh, sure, I'll give you what you want. But if you make it a really short time frame that you set the intention for, then you have to compress all that learning into a really short amount of time. And then you can have complete, like, the suffering of you can't imagine the suffering. So I suffered and suffered, but then at the end of it, I did become the person I needed to be. And he did not get kicked out of high school, and he had a great experience. And it was like, I was the person that I needed to be. But all that to say, intentions are very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Melissa, I mean, I keep reading, IFS also. And IFS often, suggests, or the way how IFS, describes these unattached burdens, IFS framework often says that these unattached burdens sometimes carry more than, a person's personal trauma. They
Yeah.
can, encode ancestral, or you call it cultural, or, societal pain.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, that's a very confusing thing. I'm just being honest. For me, I mean, how can you have all of these other aspects also? I mean, the cultural thing, the ancestral thing, the societal pain, and at the same time, it's not making you a better person. In a way, it's harming you. It's hurting you. I mean, it's almost like a paradox. Now, I would want to know, Melissa, how does IFS, according to you, since you are an expert and you have experienced and been in for quite some time, how does IFS differentiate between burdens that originate within the self
Mm-hmm.
versus those inherited from family or some kind of collective history? And can they ever be fully integrated? What are your thoughts? I mean, I hope you understand what I'm trying
Yeah.
to ask.
Yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
IFS calls them cultural burdens, cultural legacy burdens, primarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, I just think that because we're all porous, you know,
Hmm.
that these in the same way that unattached burdens are kind of these fragments that are just floating around that can kind of get in you, right? These legacy burdens, these like kind of like memes in a way, like cultural beliefs, they can kind of get in you, you know? And the great thing about, for me, legacy burdens is that once you identify them, because you really have a felt sense that this is not mine, like I did not go through this myself. Like, this just came to me from the ether. You know what I mean? It came to me from out there. Once you identify it, it's easier to let it go. Like, I once did a session with a firefighter of mine, not koala, oh, rhino, about carrying a legacy burden of my mother's of abandonment. Like, I just had this like really deep fear of abandonment. But like, I mean, although you can say that being raised by wolves, is a form of abandonment anyway. But like, I don't know, it was like this weird sensation, like this really isn't mine, this sense of abandonment. And I always had this image of this moment when my mother was abandoned by her stepfather when she was 7. It's like this harrowing. It's like an image out of a movie where she's on her bicycle and he's driving away. And I mean, really, Sarah, he's driving away forever. This is the last time she ever sees her stepfather. He is driving away, and she's pedaling, pedaling, pedaling furiously to try to catch up with him, and then he's just gone. And she's
Mm.
this unbelievable abandonment. And so I've always like had so much activation. I had so much activation around this image, this memory. And I was like, let me do some work on this. So it really was like a legacy burden. I was carrying the pain of her abandonment. And so once I felt like this is not mine, and I got to the bottom of it by working with this part of me that was carrying it, I was able to unburden it. And because you feel in your body, this isn't mine. And when you get to the bottom of it and you realize this really isn't mine, and you get whatever it is that the parts want you to know about it or why they were carrying it. Like, my parts were carrying it because they felt like, well, maybe I need to help my mom carry it because she can't carry it herself, And once it's like they realize, oh, I can't carry her abandonment for her. I can't help her with this. It's hers. I can't help her. Like, me carrying it doesn't help her. All it does is hurt me. Then I could let it go. And so I just unburdened that image, and I unburdened the feelings that came with it. And I just unburdened that legacy burden of abandonment. And I was like, and it felt better. Yeah. And it's easy.
Wow.
It's actually easier sometimes it's easier to unburden cultural legacy burdens, or legacy burdens that come from you from the outside, because you really do feel granularly that this is not mine. And when you feel that something isn't yours, it's easier to let it go, because you're like, this isn't me. Like, it's easy to let go of what isn't you. You know what I mean? Like, if somebody gives you a shirt and they're like, oh, here's a present. And you're like, ew, that's totally not my style. It's so easy to donate it. You know what I mean? Whereas if you've had a shirt in your closet for like 20 years and you've outgrown it, but it used to be part of your identity, and then you look at it and you're like, I haven't worn this in 10 years. And then you're like, oh my God, but I really should let it go. But you're like, but it was me. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's harder to let go of things that felt like it was me. And when it's a legacy burden, you don't feel like it was you. So it's easier to let it go.
Now, another interesting question came in my mind, and I think you're the best person to answer this. Melissa, do unattached burdens have any origin where they are created, or they are just hitchhiking here and there? I mean, piggybacking and just being a spiritual freeloader, today on you, next day someone else, once you fade. Or or can they be created? I mean, because I have spent quite some time studying esotericism and tantra also. And I personally feel when you delve into these things, you can create certain energy. You can create certain entity, or you can invoke. And the easiest thing to understand, what I'm trying to point at is evil eye. I mean, if someone is not happy with you, just feels horrible looking at you, that you're happy and you're enjoying, can that negative emotion xyz, okay, so let's play it this way. I am a negative person, I hate what you're doing, I don't like you happy, and I put an extra energy and effort and intention, and I wish that so and so or xyz or you should not be happy. Can that create an unattached burden that further latches onto your energetic field and suck the energy and vitality and the goodness out of you? Or these unattached burdens are created and they are just there and they are just hitchhiking? Do you understand what I'm trying to
Yeah, like, kind of
understand
like,
with this
can you
question?
create a new one, or all they are
Yep.
pre-existing? I mean,
Hmm.
my experience, just for me, I can't really speak because I don't, I really, these are very tough to answer questions, right? But my experience is that they tend to be pre-existing. Like, if this person is already so negative, and hateful, like, why, like, they probably already have some in them that then want to just move from them to me. So I
I
don't
can
necessarily,
summon them and
yeah.
direct it towards you. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like, I mean, there's some people I have encountered people just like that. Like, I call them, like, this one person is like this Iago figure in my life. And I don't know
Uh-huh.
why they hate me. It could be that I look like someone in their family. You know what I mean? They just always hated me ever since they met me. They just hated me. They just,
Maybe in general, they were not comfortable around your energy. You were more vibrant and good.
like, really truly, I don't know. Okay. They
Mm-hmm.
really hate me. They've done everything
Mm-hmm.
they can to destroy me,
Oh
every
God.
chance they get,
So
in
sorry.
the most
Mm-hmm.
sophisticated, subtle ways possible. And so my sense is that there's something pre-existing in them. I don't think they're creating the negative energies. I think it's already in them, whether it's burdens or unattached burdens or cultural burdens. I think it's already there. And I tend, my general, because I do kind of try to situate myself in time and space. And so, I mean, I think that these entities are just like, really, one book that's helpful for getting like a temporal sense of this is mm, LSD and the Mind of the Universe by Christopher Beisch. And he did many, many high dose LSD trips and then
Mm-hmm.
wrote a book about it. And he talks about kind of how, like, the because he's really encountering tremendous evil and suffering in these trips. Like they were not all joy and happiness and light at
Is
all.
that the same guy who took, higher dosage of LSD
Yeah.
by any chance?
Really high dose, really high dose. He did like,
Yeah.
I think a professor of religion or something.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah,
So
I
anyway,
think so.
that's a great book to look at this angle on these issues, which is that, like, where do these energies come from, right? And I mean, to really get super metaphysical, right?
Mm,
If the universe started out as a point, and then it went right in the Big Bang, and then it differentiated into a billion different things, and now we're evolving consciousness, right? It's like we're evolving from nothing to consciousness, right? And that is a brutal, vicious, violent process. Yeah. And so I think that these entities, like, are, they're just part of the evolutionary process along with us, because humans are pretty primitive, right? I mean, last time I checked, we're a species that's currently engaging in wars and raping children, and starving children, and
awful things.
right. We are barbarians. Blessings to us. Okay. Like, I'm not, no shade on humans. Okay. But come on, let's call a spade a spade. This
Yep.
species is still in a very barbaric phase of evolution. Okay. Because evolution is from the barbaric to the evolved. Right. And so,
Mm,
different places and different people are on different, arcs of that journey. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, the arc of moral justice is long, or uh, the arc of justice is long, but the arc of something is long, but it bends towards justice, right? So, like, it takes a long time. We're talking hundreds of thousands of years to fully evolve into, like, the actual, like, you know, creatures that we are today, right? But we're still very barbaric. And I just think that that also goes for these entities. They're also evolving with us. And part of the process is for some of us to be like filters to detoxify, and to help some of them, right, go from this barbaric level to, like, to go to the other side, like some people who have more advanced consciousness, can we use it? We're trying to clean this stuff out of us, trying to, like, help clean and filter the, craziness. And maybe that's what evolution is. It's just filtering out the nastiness and creating more of the goodness, right? So that would be how I would approach it.
mhm. Now, I have a very provocative question for you, Melissa. Some clients fear that releasing a burden will erase who they are,
Mm.
is going to erase their identity, who they are. How do we guide someone, whose identity is tightly bound to suffering? I mean, without causing, existential, destabilization. What are your thoughts?
It's a good question, because I mean, my parts for many years would complain. They're like, "We're dying, we're dying," and I was like, "Well, but that is part of the process." So I don't think sugarcoating it is a good idea, because, like, when we transform, parts do experience it as ego death. But the thing is that the self, the true self, right, does not is not really attached to any sense of identity. Like, the self is that space apart from the parts that is just awareness. To use, like, a super old fashioned, hilarious 1970s term. Okay, so before IFS, there was Hal and Sidra Stone. They did a form of parts work called voice dialogue. And they use different words for parts and self, but it's very, very, very similar. And if you want to, like, study an IFS adjacent thing, you could study voice dialogue, but it's a little bit more 1970s. And so they called, instead of the parts, they called it the selves, plural, right? Like, kind of like you're like, well, anyway, they would call it the selves. And then for the self, what they called it, are you ready? They called the self the aware ego process.
Wow.
I know it's a mouthful. Okay. So it's so cute, right? So it's the aware ego process, but there is something lovely about it, because it's aware right? It's awareness, and it's a process. It's not static. And so the self, through the lens of this idea of being an awareness process, doesn't have attachment to anything. Like there's no, hobby I have, or identity I have, or like way I look, or age I am, or plus or minus, right? Alive or dead, like I don't care. Like the self doesn't care. The self is just awareness in a process. And so as a result, when I believe, for me personally, my experience of doing over 8,000 hours of IFS on myself is that the self doesn't fear ego death because it's beyond that concern. It doesn't have ego to be connected to, so it doesn't care, right? So when my parts say to me things like, they think about the scene in the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey by Kubrick, where Bowman is pulling out the little things of the computer, Hal, and Hal goes, "Stop, Dave. I can feel my mind going." Right? And my parts are always like, "Stop! I can feel my mind going." They're like, "You're killing me. Like I'm having ego death," right? And I'm like, that's true. I get that you feel like you are dying, and I'm not going to undermine that or tell you you're not. I'm just going to like be a role model that there is something beyond your sense of what self is, and that's me. And so when you have a stronger and stronger and stronger sense of self, you have a thing, whatever it is, the aware ego process, the self, you know what I mean? That is there, so that even as these parts are so worried that, oh my God, there's going to be nothing there. It's like, well, look, there's nothing here, but I'm okay. I am nothing. I am the embodiment of nothingness and I still exist. Like nothing can exist. Here it is. And so if I can be just as I am in this weird, empty, nothing awareness process that I am, like I invite you to consider that you don't have to be, there is something beyond that ego death. I know it feels like there will be nothing, but it will just be like more of me. And I am here and you feel me. I am something, right? Whatever I am, even though I'm weird, I'm something. So what would it be like if you can just be a little more like me? And then they're like, I'll take that under consideration.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
True. Melissa, in my observation and experience, certain burdens may feel very seductive. They might shape your creativity, ambition, and even, this a kind of moral superiority. I would want to know, how do we recognize when a burden has become, our sole source of false empowerment? And what ethical considerations, guide us in helping ourselves or someone, get rid of it or release it? What are your thoughts?
That's a tough one, because I think when you have parts who are like, especially, protectors who believe like very strongly errors, like narcissistic parts who think everyone else is hurting me and they're the problem and I'm perfect. You know what I mean? Like they really believe certain lies like that they've developed as protective. While we can have compassion, for the fact that this is a protective mechanism they're using, right? And we know that therefore they have really extreme exiles who feel very worthless, right? Because wherever there's aggrandizement, wherever there's grandiosity, there has to be inferiority. Grandiosity is the protection for inferiority. So we know they feel worthless, right? But so what we know is that this is a system that's very, 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 very damaged, that's carrying profound worthlessness at the core. And, me as a coach, I mean, I don't work with, people with, narcissism, like extreme narcissism or borderline or psychopathy, because that's for therapy. That's not for coaching. Right. But what I can say is, it's not coachable. You know what I mean? Like,
Cluster B, in my opinion.
yeah. I mean, but it's not. It really, it's, but I mean, to have compassion, right? These
Hmm.
are very, very, very deeply damaged people, some of the most damaged people because they're relationally damaged. And relationship is how we heal. So if your relational pattern is to harm the person you're in relationship with, spaghetti-o. Like now, the thing you need to heal is the thing that's damaged. So like that's a catch-22 that's very tough and it takes very serious therapy, right? I mean, I've heard statistics that say that someone who's dealing with borderline, like it may take like 2 to 3 hours of therapy a week for 7 to 10 years to make progress. And I have worked with some people, who have these kind of patterns, and I would absolutely confirm that that is a reasonable estimate, because it's very hard to try to heal someone using relationship when relationship is the thing that is broken. So it's like it's like you're trying to like go to sea, get from point A to point B in a boat that leaks, and you're constantly like getting the water out, like while you're trying to so it's just really hard. And I do have compassion for people who, have those relational damage, and it takes more work, really. I think it just takes more work. And I don't have good answers for that, because I think honestly the only answer I have is more work. Honestly, just
Fair enough.
more work.
Hmm.
And also, I also think I would say the other thing I would say is that coddling, like enabling the pattern is not helping the person. Like I think that's
So
toxic.
true.
Toxic compassion, because I really believe, and I think Terry Real does a good job of talking about this in his book, Why Can't I Get Through to You, right? Because often, patriarchy patterns men to have entitlement and grandiosity in order to like deal with their, emotional wounding. And grandiosity does not respond effectively to um, being enabled. It just keeps going. So like you end up shit on, and they end up like just happy, and nobody's getting anywhere. So like one thing that Terry Real says is that grandiosity responds to accountability. When there are actually consequences, that's when you get some traction in the work. And until there are consequences, no, they're not going to change. They'll make everybody else the problem. They'll project on everybody else. You did it. They'll make everyone else in their life do the emotional labor. They do nothing. You know what I mean? When you say, oh, you know what? The way you do relationships doesn't work for me. So I am removing, this enabling, because this isn't working for me. It just doesn't work. And that's not lacking compassion. It's just like you have to have compassion for yourself, right? I mean, if I'm being blamed for things I did not do, I can't play that game. Like I didn't do that, And if they don't like that and they cut off or they scream, then I'm like, hey, you can't scream at me. I'm hanging up the phone now, right? And it's about behavior and boundaries and accountability, not enabling and tolerating and doing extra emotional labor and walking on eggshells for them. Like that does not help. That's enabling. So that's codependence. So I do think that in those kind of situations, like really getting clear about compassion includes you, and relating from a place where we have to be mutually compassionate, where you're kind to me and I'm kind to you, but if you're not kind to me, I can't have a relationship with you. I think that's a starting place. Yeah.
True.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to add something over here. I mean, at times I'm labeled as selfish and mean by a lot of people, my friend circle, and a lot of family member. And why was that? Because, I don't believe in saving individuals from facing the consequences of their action. I will not create an impediment. I will not be an obstruction. I will not be a shield. Let them face it and learn it. That's the natural way and
Yes.
order. And
Yes.
I'm not here to disrupt that. And because of this, trust me, a lot of people used to hate me. Now, of course, I've got rid of everyone in my life, but they used to label me that she's a bitch, she's so selfish and mean, no compassion, no empathy. I mean, there's no room for misplaced compassion and empathy and emotions in my life now. I'm done. I'm so sorry. If you are, screwing something, you got to be ready to face the consequences. And I'm not going to be, Mother Teresa, or, I'm not going to be some kind person, with a shield and protect you. I'm so sorry. I
No.
mean, this is what life taught me. I mean, nobody came, and, I had to learn from my own mistakes. So why not you? You can learn as well. There's
Yep.
no harm. So, I mean, I totally get that, when the way how you, answered that question. Now, of course, I think our conversation has, really, stretched long. So, before we conclude, I have got another, annoying or provocative, however you label it. I mean, a strange question. And that question, Melissa, is, I mean, I personally am now aware, what these burdens are, unattached burdens. Some of these unattached burdens are shitty burdens, horrible, nightmare causing entity, burden, XYZ, whatever you call them.
Mhm.
And they can be evil.
Yeah.
But, when I go through IFS insists in not considering any part to be bad, and seeing them as bad, no bad parts.
Mm-hmm.
We get to hear that.
Yeah.
Now I would want to know, how do you navigate the tension between honoring a part and preventing it from causing ongoing harm, especially when its behavior feels, deliberately antagonistic? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. It's just, I mean, again, it's like, it's true when we have a lot of trauma or unattached burdens or burdens, okay?
Hmm.
That is not our fault, right? And all of us kind of roll the dice. Some of us got, really, we got a bad roll. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of trauma. And when we have a lot of trauma and a lot of contact with serious, pure, uncut evil, right? Then we just have this gunk that's inside of us, right? That our little parts took in. It is not their fault that they took that in, right? So it makes no sense to be mean to a 2-year-old who believes terrible things like I'm worthless or I'm a piece of shit just because, my ex-mother screamed at that, screamed that at me constantly, like, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. She screamed at, she screamed, "You snotty, selfish, shitty you're a snitty, shitty piece of shit." Like, okay,
True.
you know what? It's not my fault that she's that broken and damaged and full of her own demons, right? I mean, okay. And I am so sorry that that little 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old had to hear over and over and over, "You are a snotty, selfish, shitty piece of shit,"
Hmm.
Like, that's evil. That's horrible. Who would want to fill up a child with that information, right? Well, my mother, right? She got to do that.
Mine too.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and it's horrific, right? But like, we can't go at it, like, there's no way to like wage war against the evil that's inside of us with rage or anger, because it's 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds carrying it. And they are carrying it. Why are they carrying it? Let's understand that, right? I have to feel that I am shit. Because when I was, say, 12, right, or 10, and this demonic, she's clearly a demon hotel. I mean, she must be like, full up, right? Like totally parasitized by just, I don't know what kind of evil to be doing this to a child, right? She is just broken, 6 ways to Sunday. But here's this broken individual who's just shrieking curses at a poor child, filling the child with all this garbage. And now I feel so much rage and hatred towards her, reasonably, because she's expressing pure hatred and, horror towards me. I mean, if I did not believe some of that, right? If I didn't take some of that in, like, I deserve this, if I really felt I don't deserve this and she is a piece of garbage, then Sarah, you know what I would do? I would wake up in the middle of the night when I'm 12 and I would stab her in the neck and kill her, right? Because I would be like, this,
Fair enough.
right? This individual is annihilating me, breaking my soul into a million pieces. If I knew my worth, I would kill her, right? Which, that is not a good solution. That turns me into her, right? And that's just not functional, because my survival depends on getting some kind of mothering out of this demon, right? Like, I don't have any other options. So, we talk about freeze, whatever.
Fight, flight, fawn, freeze. Huh?
Yeah. Fawning in a long-term captivity situation is the best solution, right? Tend and befriend and fawn. So we need to fawn and have trauma bonding and Stockholm syndrome with, parents who are annihilators. When our parents annihilate us, we have to take in some of that annihilation so that we don't become them and annihilate them right back, right? We have to fawn. We have to, like, put it in our body, like sequester all that rage and pain and all those bad, things. And so our parts are actually doing us a service by believing that we're shit, because it keeps us down. Because if we didn't stay down, we would rise up and kill them. Right? So we actually, like, paradoxically, understanding that it is a job in the service of our survival to believe that we're crap. Does that make sense?
It does.
So we have to believe that we suck so that we can survive a situation where people are telling us we suck all the time. Because if we believe some of it, we will not rise up and cut their heads off. Because then it will be the French Revolution in our house. And then
it makes sense.
Yeah. So knowing that our parts were doing this to save us, to make it possible to, survive this horrific, annihilating environment, then we can have compassion that they did this so that we could survive. And now we want to go to them with compassion and say, in the past, you needed to carry all this garbage, but now you don't. And I want to hear how terrible it was for you, to have to carry this garbage and experience this garbage, because they need to be witnessed, right? They need you to know how bad it was to be treated this way. And once you're able to really witness how bad it was, then they will let it go. And that's the unburdening process in IFS, right? That's why actually unburdening our wounds is harder than unburdening a legacy burden, even unburdening an unattached burden. Ours are the worst because they're the most graphic, and we often really need to, like, go back to the memories and relive the memory in order to really make this part feel like it's really heard, really understood, and how terrible it was before it will let it go. And that's what actually makes our personal unburdening harder than cultural legacy unburdening or unattached burden unburdening.
Melissa, are you suggesting that just in order to survive a toxic and a narcissistic or an abusive antagonistic relationship, our paths, allow us to tolerate certain things just to survive?
Yeah, we have to.
So, I mean, my question to this thought and this idea is, why can't the parts, stand up with us and protect ourselves rather than letting us tolerate and survive that? I mean, just a thought.
When you're 6 years old, you can't fight back. You're not physically able. And a lot of times, we're being physically abused.
Are you saying that when we are vulnerable, that is the time the parts protect us, so that, we don't lose no more collateral damage? It's helping us avoid that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because look, I mean, I know for me personally, right, when I'm dealing with this completely psychotic person who's, you know, literally she's throwing knives at me. She's throwing glass and screaming and like at the top of her lungs and calling me names, right? Like I just have to stand there and take it. If I do anything to antagonize her, what else is she going to do? You know what I mean? Like
She's
I need,
gonna throw more shit.
you know what I mean? Yeah, like I mean, at least she's only. I mean, luckily the knives didn't hit my body, but I don't know. I don't know what else she's going to throw. I mean, I don't know. So I can't make it worse. I have to just stay as small and as quiet and as just take it as I can to just get through this. That's the only. It's fawning. It's freezing. These are our only solutions. There's no better solutions.
But Melissa, on the long run, don't you think, this shapes our identity, our personality, and the way how we process things
Absolutely.
and our evolvement?
It teaches us crazy things that we have to spend decades unraveling. It teaches us horrible things. I mean, these are the worst lies that a parent could ever teach a child is that abuse is love, that you have to put up with being beaten and screamed at and, abused in order to like survive. I mean, it patterns us in the most awful ways. And if, almost everyone who's psychologically, physically, or sexually abused as a child by their parents ends up addicted, going through usually at least 1 or 2 decades of addiction. I mean, minimum. I mean, if you get out of it with 1 decade of addiction, oh, that's a win. Do you know what I'm saying? That is a win. Most of us are in here 2, 3, 4, 5 decades of addiction, right?
Oh God.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, like,
Mm.
no, it is. And this is why people, have so much hatred for pedophiles because they know, oh my God, the damage that is done to a child by violating them in this way, however bad you think it is, it's worse. Literally. We are patterned for decades and we are set up for decades and decades and decades of very intense inner work to heal wounds that the people that were supposed to love and protect us weaponized survival and love, just for their evil purposes. And I mean, I think anyone who really abuses their children to this extent, I honestly believe they're all chock full of unattached burdens. I really do. I think they've got a lot of evil lodged in there. And so we're all dealing with deep encounters with evil that we have to, do very deep work to excavate. And that's why, paradoxically, just working on the psychological level may not be adequate because we are dealing with metaphysical levels of evil. And so, having this conversation, I think, is really important because, like you said, and I also have experienced that when we expand our field of our range of what we're willing to work with, unattached burdens or guides, when we expand it out to these entity levels, because I really think part of the harm was on the entity level, because we're dealing really with metaphysical levels of evil, then we've got to get metaphysical to fight it. You know what I mean? And when we do that, I think we have more tools in our arsenal to be healthier, more whole human beings.
Mm-hmm. I mean, before we conclude today's discussion, I would like to express, something. I mean, the takeaway from this conversation, or especially this last part. IFS strongly, suggests and advocates that no part is bad. I mean, I personally don't agree. I mean, there can be good parts and bad parts. That's the way how I see. Because I mean, the way how I work, the modalities, the frameworks that I refer to and work by, I personally feel there can be bad parts as well. And I mean, I would want to know on a personal level, not as a IFS life coach, but from the point of being a survivor, surviving all the horrible things, patching yourself up on a daily basis. That's what we do. Every day I patch, every day you patch, and then we sit in front of the screen and we start this mission of patching others up. So I would want to know, do you personally feel, that there can be a little bad parts as well out there? I mean, why give them a free pass? That's what I want to, know.
I would say that in myself, I never ever have the belief that I have a bad part. And I've never met a bad part in myself. Because even, my crazy firefighters who drive me around and eat, if they're eating all the toffee or eating all the, tangerines or whatever they're eating, right? They're always doing it because they want to like make sure that my head doesn't explode from all the trauma. You know what I mean? So they're doing these crazy things out of loyalty to try to like keep me from flipping out, right? So I personally, and also, and I don't recommend this, okay? I will say, like, so just, I do not recommend this. For a long time, I had this one unattached burden whose name was Am, A-M. And
Mm-hmm.
really, unattached burdens, another way of putting them is just like basically pure psychopathic energies, right? Like that's another way of putting it, right? An unattached burden is
Mm-hmm.
like psychopathy, okay? So the idea that you would be friends, long-term friends with a psychopath, okay, is not good. So I do not recommend this. So do not do as I do, do not do this, okay? But earlier in my IFS journey, I thought, oh, well, I could like make friends with this demon, and whatever, right? So for like maybe it was kind of a long time, 5 years maybe. Am was kind of like part of my inner system, and let's just say some bad things happened. For instance, like at the time, my system didn't necessarily trust the self, right? So Am was kind of like the black market self. So like if they didn't feel like I was like giving them what they wanted, they would go to Am. My demon, it was a demon. I mean, but we've gotten to know it, right? And so like one time I started dating this guy, but I was spending too much time with him, and my exiles were like, "You're not spending enough time with us," and we're upset. But my firefighters were like, "Ooh, he's sexy," so we just kept spending time with him, and the exiles were really upset. So they went to Am. So Am was like, "Oh, let's make a breast lump."
Oh God.
Yeah. So okay, like demons just don't think. They're like black and white thinking. They're crazy. So I got a lump in my breast that was so big you could feel it under a sweater. Okay, it was huge.
Oh God.
Like, oh my God, it was terrorizing. So then, I had to go get a mammogram and get oh my God, it was terrorizing. It was a terrible experience. And, the doctors were mean, of course, because they always are and almost always, and they were like, it's just a cyst. It's like, hello, you tell people to go see the doctor when they have a lump. What do you want? And then you're mocking me because I came to see you and it's a cyst. How am I supposed to know? You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so they made this big cyst to terrorize me, to get my attention. And that's what Am did, right? Because that's what unattached burdens do. They do crazy things. I mean, and I went through so many different weird, crazy experiences because I allowed this. I tried to make friends with this demon, right? Do not do this. Whenever you meet one, work with it and then tell it to go. But so all that to say, like, even do I think that Am was evil? No, I don't think Am was a bad, even this demon was trying to help me. It's just it's such a psychopath and it's so, it's so unevolved, right? That it just can't do better, you know? So I think that's kind of like on the metaphysical plane. I think that's how I look at like, parts that are doing wacky things or even demons that are doing wacky things. But as a survivor, I will say that in my work with my parts, I do think it's important to allow parts to hate the parts that hurt you. So
Hmm.
I think that like compassion is for your parts, right? But when you're dealing with your own perpetrators, I think that is a space where it's important to allow the parts to have the full range of feelings, including hatred and thinking that they're bad or whatever, because I think you really need, like, I actually think hate has become like a taboo emotion in our culture,
Oh God, yes,
right?
I
Like, you have
second
to
that.
be compassionate for everybody and everything and every time, blah, 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 blah. It's like, you know what? Guess what? I was raped. And that is like
I'm
being
so
blown
sorry.
apart, right? That's like being annihilated. And so you have to like allow parts to feel hate. And I honestly think we need more classes on how to hate, like inappropriate, settings, like in therapy. Like we've got so much hate out in the world, but that I think is partly because we're not like working with our own hate in ourselves. And so I do think we need to like kind of like rehabilitate or bring back hate and learn what hate is and allow our parts to give them permission to hate the people who hated them. Because I think you need to get to the bottom of your hatred in order to come out the other side. So if you have parts that are like, I hate my perpetrators and, I don't want to see anything good in them, like, yes, that's part of the healing process and that's okay.
True. And I would like to add something over here. I mean, a couple of days back, I was in fact telling, my husband also that, I play different scenarios in my head where I execute my abusers every time. And he was like, what the freaking shit is this?
It's great. I think it's great. My parts love, the movie Fargo with the wood chipper.
I'm not, no, I'm not aware. Mhm,
It's very graphic, but anyway, there's a wood
mhm.
chipper, where you put wood in and it makes it in a little
Yeah,
chip.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, well, perpetrator,
Oh,
wood chipper.
wow.
And yes, yes. So I really do think that, like, there's a mime, Dean Evans, and he says, "Don't censor your imagination.
Mm,
Don't censor your imagination." Okay, we can't hurt anybody in our imagination, right?
no.
And I also read a bunch of books on autism once, like, really nonverbal kids, right? And the doctors who were curing autism with like really intensive play therapy, like 8, 10, 12 hours a day, would say to the parents, let your children be violent. Violence is part of the spectrum of human experience,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And so, like, these violent, hating images and feelings, we need to work through them and allow them. We cannot censor any emotions of our parts. Nothing is off limits in our inner work. So kill them over and over.
Yeah, I mean, rather than killing them with kindness, I think it's better go in that space and just knock them off however you wish and please. And it is peaceful. I mean, I practice that and it is peaceful. And to what you said, I have experienced that, in my country as well, that it's heavily demonized when you begin to hate your abuser. You've got to be the bigger person. You've got to be forgiving. You've got to be loving. I don't know who, I mean, advocates all these BS. This is pure bullshit. I mean, you're just enabling abusers. No one is reaching out to the abuser and telling them to change their action, but why are you protecting the abuser from facing, the consequences of their action? If I'm hating, okay, fine, I'm not going ahead and doing things to that abuser. But if I'm hating him and if I'm angry, if I have rage on the inside, why are you labeling me that I cannot heal if I carry these things? No, I mean, my rage, my anger towards my family, towards my narcissistic parent helped me be where I am now. Okay, there is a lot of patching up, but at least I feel happy I came out of that shit. And it was only because of my rage and anger. So
Yes.
why demonize rage and anger? I also don't know why these stupid people, they're like, oh, you need to be very compassionate, or you need to have empathy. You are being narcissistic, you are being psychopathic. I mean, you can't do that. You can't heal if you don't forgive. Another BS. I just don't agree to that shit that I get to hear from a lot of. I'm sorry, all the therapists out there, but please don't, advocate these things, because some of us are sensitive and damaged beyond repair. I mean, not in the literal sense, but yeah, we have seen a lot of shit. So don't gaslight us telling us that, if we don't forgive our abuser, we can't move on, with our healing. We can. I did.
Yep.
Melissa did. She moved on.
Mhm.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, that's there. That's a very common thing that I have observed. The moment, I have seen it in the society also. The moment I talk about someone who's very feisty, horrible, they're like, It's okay. They have a difficult backstory. Relax, chill. Don't say that. They learn. Let God teach them. You just be silent. I'm
No,
like, please. I'm not gonna be silent. I'm gonna kick them out of my life and I'm gonna say that they are a bitch, they are an asshole. That's it. I'm not gonna sugarcoat things and say my mother was crappy because of her difficult backstory. No, she was shitty. That's it.
yeah, I mean,
Why find backstory?
just because, like, I mean, I just think a lot of people have toxic compassion.
Oh God, yes, that's the right term.
Problem, like, because behavior, right? If you're an adult, you are responsible for your behavior. If you
Absolutely.
scream at, psychologically abuse, coercively control, physically harm, beat, kick, rape a child, those are
Yeah,
these are crimes, okay? So, you know, we're never going to get anywhere as a culture until we force perpetrators to be accountable for their crimes. I can have compassion in my heart for what damaged you enough to make you a perpetrator, but I can also hold you accountable at the same time.
absolutely. I can have compassion, where it needs, but I can hate, someone who's being abusive and toxic. That's absolutely normal.
Yeah.
And I think that's how they, disconnect you from your agency. They disconnect you from your core by implanting these ideas that, you can only connect with your higher self if you just move with compassion and pure love. I mean, what the hell do I do with the hate and rage and other emotions? Just dump them? I'm a human. I have a spectrum of emotion that I experience and exhibit. So you're forbidding me from being a human. You're forbidding me from being a whole. And then you're telling me to believe that this is the way to, get in touch with my higher self. I think that's pure BS.
Yeah, I'm a believer in the chaotic process of
Yeah,
allowing
that's lovely.
everything, you know, because I really believe that, like, if we do our inner work, which includes hate, rage, anger, which creates agency, like you said,
Mm,
anger, like you said, it often means I will set a boundary, I will say no,
yep.
you know,
Hmm.
and that makes us more powerful. And I really think that part of the reason we have all this bullshit out there in culture about, like, oh my God, you can't be angry and hate, is because
Mm.
it's a world that doesn't want us empowered, right? And we're like, no, I'm taking my power back. And rage and hatred and anger are rocket fuel for personal empowerment. So I celebrate them and I say, embrace them. Like, you work with them, learn how, because when people learn how to work with anger, work with hate, be skillful with it, right?
Yep.
Like, it's when I'm skillful with it that I'm not going to go out and buy a gun and shoot someone else in the head. When I, am able to work with my rage and hatred and anger in myself, that makes me actually a better person. Yeah.
Absolutely. I personally feel rage, hate, and anger are the faculty that helps you develop this understanding of boundary.
Yep. Absolutely.
And if those faculties are muted or abandoned, you just become a doormat, an emotional toilet.
Absolutely.
And I mean, and you just keep suffering because you have been disconnected and you can't use those power. You have become powerless in a way. And
Yep.
that's what I think, a lot of these culture, to an extent, religion, societal norm, they advocate, they aggressively advocate. You need to forgive. You
Yeah.
need to forgive for your own healing. I think I won't. I have not forgiven and I'm healing fine.
Yep.
That's it.
Right there with you, sister.
Yes, so thank you so much, Melissa. It was such a lovely conversation, and I'm looking forward to have you again with another interesting topic where we can brainstorm and talk and share. So thank you so much, Melissa, for joining in today.
Thanks, Sarah.